Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JustKnowTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to a Arsenal transfer talk video. Obviously, it's transfer time. It's the January transfer window. It's right around the corner. So we're going to start kind of moving into those types of chats and talking about the players that Arsenal are being linked to for January. And there'll probably be some talk about players that are being linked to for summer moves as well. So we're going to get into all of that. On today's show, we're going to talk about Alexis Mac Allister. Arsenal have been linked with him. Shock. Also Mudryk. There's competition for Mudryk, which is not very surprising. He's a really good player, and multiple teams are going to be looking at him for this January transfer window. Cedric looks like he's on the move to Fulham, and Martinelli 2027. So we're going to get into all of that. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. I am back from Qatar. I am back in this room. So yeah, I'm happy to be back with you guys and to talk Arsenal because I've missed it. I've missed Arsenal. The World Cup was amazing. I don't know how to describe it other than amazing. I mean, you guys can let me know in the chat what you thought about the World Cup, but the group stage, the knockouts, the semifinals to the final, it was just so like exciting and my first time ever being there. So I was very honored and excited to be there. But I've missed Arsenal more than anything. I don't know about you guys, but I've missed Arsenal so much. And so I'm happy to get back into it. Arsenal play on Boxing Day. We'll also have like a behind closed doors friendly against Luton Town, I think, either today or tomorrow. So hopefully nothing bad happens there. But title charge time, it's time to get back into Arsenal and seeing if this team can get through these difficult months without Gabriel Jesus and continue this title charge on to the end of the season. We know that the initial goal at the beginning of the season was to make it into the top four. That looks all but certain unless we fall off an infinite cliff, but now we updated our expectations, and I want Arsenal to stay as close to Manchester City or as far ahead of Manchester City for as long as possible, and really make a a charge towards the title. And that's not going to happen unless we get into that January transfer window and make things happen and shake it up. Now, I've seen people kind of say like, oh, we need 3 or 4 players. We need a lot of players. I don't think we need that many players, to be honest. I do think that the club and I view Emile Smith-Rowe coming back in as a boost. I think we need an attacker and maybe a midfielder can wait because we do have El Neni. And I know that's like, what do you mean we have El Neni? That's not quality, but we can't get everything done in January. And for me, because of the player that we're going to talk about in a second and some other players that are available in the summer, I'd prefer us not to spend the money in January on a midfielder and wait into the summer and bring in somebody big. A marquee signing in midfield at either left 8 or the DM position that can really move Arsenal to the next level. And so, yeah, you guys let me know in the chat what you guys think about it. Let's see what you guys are saying. Twisted says expectations shouldn't change on the back of a purple patch. Fair enough. Mafia Boss says big up Jess. Thab says look who's back again. Jess is back again. I'm lame, you guys, whatever. Let's see. Zender says 4 a.m. Eastern time, positively missing the Arsenal. I am missing Arsenal so much. I cannot wait for us to play on Boxing Day. But then at the same time, when we're about to kick off against West Ham, I'm going to be like, why? Because I get so nervous. But yeah, we're back. And I just realized this, like when I saw my intro, this is like a sidebar, is that I need to get that updated. Like I will be getting that updated in the new year because it has Ceballos on it. It has Pepe on it. What is it? So I'm going to get that updated, get a new intro in there for you guys because like, what the hell? What was that? Zender says, I think we've got a redundancy in midfield and backline long term. So we definitely need redundancy at the front. If you mean redundancy, are you saying players that are like for like that can kind of play the same positions? I do think that in midfield in particular, it looks like, especially in the 8 positions, like we got it covered. We have Xhaka, we have Vieira, Odegaard, ESR that can play there in our minds. He can play there. That's what we think. So it feels like we have enough there, but I still think we need a different option. I still think we need something else. And also we need another DM behind Thomas Partey. So I think there's still maybe 2 positions there up for grabs. I'm not personally, for me, I don't think Sambi's gonna make it. I think Sambi is somebody that needs to be moved on, either on a loan or sold. For me, he's not gonna make it. That's for me. That's my personal opinion. So if you remove him from the equation and you remove El Neni, then we have an additional space for another 8, and we have an additional space for another 6. And I think those 2 positions should get filled sooner rather than later. I think the number 8 should be somebody that can step right into the position and put, pressure on Granit Xhaka, because Granit is 31. Like, he's gonna need pressure on his position at some point. And Thomas Partey, it might be somewhat more of like a younger option that can grow into that position. But I still feel like there's room to grow for this team in every line, in the defense, in the midfield, and the attack. EK says, in my humble opinion, we need 2 attackers, another injury in the forward line, and we are struggling. Fair enough. Um, Tenubix says, side note, but Smith Rowe looking more and more like he can't be relied upon to assist in a meaningful way in the second half of the season will be more about restoring him to 100% fitness. I mean, I did kind of feel like we would see him a little bit sooner than, like, we haven't seen him yet. He didn't feature in any of the Dubai Cup. He didn't feature against Juventus, and so he may be in a position where, I mean, I think Arteta even said that hasn't really started training yet, which is a little bit disappointing considering that I think a lot of us expected him to be available on the 26th, ready to go against West Ham. So it might take him a little bit of time to get up and going, and that's why it's so important for Arsenal to get in the January transfer window early and get whatever player they're going to get, because we have quite a few players that are kind of on the edges of injuries trying to get going, and Smith Rowe is one of those. You also have Zinchenko and Tomiyasu that are kind of on the edge of coming back from injuries. It's very, yeah. So I get what you're saying about that. We might be waiting for Smith Rowe to get up to speed, and we can't lose games in the midst of that. Thab says we are stacked at 8. xhaka, Sambi, ESR, Vieira, Odi, Patino, Nweri coming through with Miles Luskelly. See, I don't really count the young players, the players coming through the academy. I still think all of them, maybe not. It depends. It depends, because some players, like a lot of people felt like Patino would just come straight into the first team. He went on a loan, and he was one of the most bright stars coming out of our academy. There's not everybody is Saka. I think not saying that you're like this, but I think a lot of us assume that everybody is like bukayo Saka. Like, they're going to come straight into the first team and blah, blah, blah. Saka is an anomaly. He wasn't even somebody that people really spoke about that highly. You know what I mean? Like, it was more Reece Nelson and this guy and this guy. So I think with Miles Luskelly and Nweri, I would just be a little bit like, I would take them and put them to the side. If they go straight into the first team, then they do. If they don't, they don't. Now, in regards to the other players that you're talking about, Patino, I still feel like he should go on another loan. Let's not rush him in. Odegaard, Vieira, ESR, Sambi, again, like I said, probably needs to be moved on. And then you have xhaka. I still think there's one space for a player that can step straight in and make a difference, because again, we're going to be in Champions League next season. That's going to be completely different than Europa League matches. Isaac says, oh, wow, Jess, it's been a minute. Nice to see you again. Nice to see you as well. And the Edri says, Mudryk is someone I would expect. Felix would make me excited. Exactly. Twisted says, Jess, how is good form sustained with a thin squad? I think you need a bit of luck, to be honest. I think right now we're just on the edges of having just enough and not enough. So I think we have had very good luck in the beginning in that first third of the season, because it's only been a third. We still have 2/3 left of decent injury, like not having a lot of injuries. We had one to Thomas Partey and Tomiyasu and Zinchenko, but for the most part, we were fine. I honestly think that in a title challenge, like, you need a bit of luck, but you also need to have a team that's mentally ready to withstand a challenge and be missing key players and have players that will step up. So we do have a thin squad, but now we're relying on somebody like Eddie Nketiah to step up in the midst of a really bad injury to Gabriel Jesus. This is where you figure out whether or not you have a player that's not good enough for Arsenal or you have a Diego Jota. So Diego Jota comes into Liverpool and helps them maintain their levels in the midst of a season where they're losing players here and there to injuries. I think that's so important. I think we're going to find out the strengths and the weaknesses of some of the players coming in because they need to be able to step in. They have to be able to step in because you're not going to ever have your best 11 for the entire season. And I think that's one thing that maybe Arsenal fans are a little bit, maybe want to believe is that we need to have our best 11 for the majority of the season. When Liverpool won the Premier League, they had their best 11 3 times in 50 games. So there was always kind of somebody in and out. They had to maintain the levels regardless of who was coming in and out. And so Arsenal are no different. We have a thin squad and players just have to step up. So it's the likes of Fabio Vieira. He has to step up and Kedia has to be able to make it till I think it's like they said February 26th is where they or 28th is where they expect Gabriel Jesus to come back in for the Leicester game. So he needs to be able to step up until then. And so for me, it's about mentally can this team kind of make it over the hump and get through difficult times because it's not an excuse just to be missing players. And I know Gabriel Jesus is a huge player. I'm not saying that he isn't, but I just think it's a mental thing more than like, do they have the quality? Do I think Nketiah can play against some of these? I mean, he did it at the back end of last season, you know? So I think the thin squad thing, Arsenal need to do their job and come in with a reinforcement or two. But at the same time, I do think the team just cannot mentally crumble because they don't have Gabriel Jesus. I just don't think it's an excuse, to be honest. He got us this far. Some of the players have to step up. And it's players like Nketiah that have been doing extra work. They said that they need to play, they need runs of games. This is their time to step up. All right, so let's get into it. We kind of chit-chatted for a minute there. Just had to catch up, it's time to catch up. Let me take a little sip of my coffee. All right. So, let's get into it. First and foremost, like I had said earlier, Arsenal are interested in Alexis Mac Allister. Now, before you guys get on my neck and say, this isn't true, it's just because of the World Cup. I know. We don't want to believe it because it's too convenient, right? But Arsenal and Atletico Madrid are teams that are already showing interest in Brighton midfielder Alexis Mac Allister with his World Cup performances to undoubtedly open doors to the best European teams sooner or later. This is from Diarios, Argentina, like Diario AS, whatever. So yeah, it's not like David Ornstein has an exclusive and he's coming at us with like, oh yeah, we're in talks. McAllister, I think by all means has pretty much signed a new contract with Brighton before he went to the World Cup. Let me just check that. Or he was on the edges of doing it or is going to do it, something like that. Let me just check this really quick. So his contract expires in 2025 with an option of one more year. And yeah, he signed the new contract in October 24th, 2022. So literally right before the World Cup. And like, kudos to Brighton because they're such a well-run club and they know what they're doing. Players like Alexis Mac Allister, players like Moises Caicedo, players like Matoma, these guys are going to get them lots of coin, lots and lots of coins. So they had Mac Allister sign a new contract right before the World Cup because they figured he'd probably do well, and he did. He had a goal and assist, but if you guys watched the World Cup like I did, he was way more than just like his impact to that team was more than just a goal and assist. He was excellent. Him, Julian Alvarez, and Enzo Fernandez, I think, as young players coming into that team really were the catalyst to, and Emi Martinez and Messi, obviously, but they kind of changed the vibe a little bit and gave them a good platform to kind of push forward. And he was excellent. And the entire time that the tournament was going on, obviously Argentina plays a different system. They play a 4-4-2, but in reality, Alexis Mac Allister was playing like a left 8. I just kept thinking, wow, those late runs into the box, his ability to his fitness levels, his passing ability. He's just a very intelligent player and a very good player. Now, before that, when I was watching him play for Brighton at the beginning of the season, I was kind of like, is it the system or is he good? Do you know what I mean? Like when you watch Brighton players play under Graham Potter, is he good or is it the system? Right? Some of their players look good because Graham Potter had them in the right positions and all this kind of stuff. I couldn't really tell. He's good, guys. He's good. He's good. He came out of that system and looked good for Argentina as well, and that's rare. I mean, look at, no offense, but like all the City players that play under Pep, none of them really look good outside the system. McAllister looked good outside the system. And that's not to say that the Manchester City players are not good, but you know what I mean. So it's kind of like, okay, maybe he's actually good. He has 5 goals this season already. No assists, but 5 goals. And it kind of reminds me of what Granit Xhaka is doing for us. He may not be getting as many assists. He is, or he may not be doing a lot of the defensive work, but he's getting on the score sheet, which is important for that particular position. So Arsenal are said to have interest in Alexis Mac Allister. He's going to cost an arm and a leg. We know what it was like dealing with Brighton when it came to Ben White. They are tough cookies when it comes to negotiating for their players, as they should be. They are on the edges of the top 6. They, you know how to run their club, and they know how to get huge fees for their players. And so I wouldn't expect Alexis Mac Allister to go for anything under 60 million, because you're going to be talking about that type of range and higher for players like Enzo Fernandez. I think the price being quoted around for him is closer to 80 something, 85 million. So Alexis Mac Allister is going to be somewhere in that region as well. Probably not as much, but you know what I mean, because he's not as hyped up as Enzo Fernandez. But this is the type of player that if Arsenal were to wait until the summer to try to bring somebody in and make a big splash and have like a marquee signing, this is probably somebody I would look at. He's Premier League proven. He's 23 years old. We can kind of see that he can play within a system and outside of a system as well. He has goals in him, and he's only going to get better. And this to me feels so much like bringing in somebody like a Ben White, you know. And I know that we have Granit there, but Granit at some point is going to have to be um moved down the pecking order. He's not going to be able to play, like, there is a ceiling on Granit Xhaka still. You know, as good as he's doing, which is amazing. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's everything that Granit Xhaka is doing right now is absolutely amazing. He's one of our most important players. But I still believe that there's a ceiling on what we can do with Granit. Do I think we can, you know, challenge for titles? And maybe yes, but I feel like we need a better midfielder there to complement Odegaard and Thomas Partey to move us into being able to really compete in the Champions League next season and maintain a title challenge there. McAllister for me is like giving me the, yeah, this is it, more than the Tielemans, because obviously Tielemans, like, he has some of those same qualities that McAllister does, but he doesn't have the fitness levels. He doesn't have the ability athletically to play, I think, for us at a high level. Like, I think he would always be someone probably like just in the team, but not really being able to break past Granit Xhaka. Alexis Mac Allister is somebody who can start. And so I'd be really interested to see what happens with this. Of course, it's just paper talk, and we know maybe nothing comes from it, but this is definitely something that I would, want to see, to be honest. Because I think he's really good. Twisted says departing Brighton players tend to flop Kukurea and Basuma. Well, those players went somewhere else. I mean, we have a Brighton player that came to us and is doing really well. Ben White. Once we gave him some time and let him cook a little bit, he's doing fine. So I wouldn't take, Spurs going for Basuma, which we knew Basuma was limited anyway. We spoke about that on the channel many times, is that he would have been a good, like, number 6 that's just cleaning up, but, like, if you want him to do anything other than that, like dictate play, he's not gonna be able to do that. And because of Højbjerg playing so well and being able to pass the ball between the lines and also doing the cleaning up, he inevitably became a rotational option for them. So that doesn't really have anything to do with us. Kukurea, I don't know what's going on with him. He's looking a whole mess. But again, that doesn't have anything to do with Ben White and how good he's been for us. Thab says, as a marquee signing, I cannot put Rice anywhere other than first on our list. I cannot. Um, I'm not big on Basmati. Like, I'm not big on Basmati. I have to be honest. I just, Maybe I don't know ball. Like, this may be where one of those tests where it's like your ball knowledge, being able, like, what do they say? It's like how you view Declan Rice is whether or not I can tell if you know ball or not. I'm failing maybe because I don't see it. Um, I don't. Like, I think he was good in the tournament, but I still just feel like you keep Thomas Partey and then you bring in somebody younger that can play that position in the future, like Thomas Partey. I don't see that as Declan Rice, and I wouldn't spend 80 million on Declan Rice. Now, would I spend 60 something on Alexis Mac Allister? Yeah, I would. But that's just me. Like, that's just me. Like, we're all different here. But what do you guys think about Alexis Mac Allister maybe potentially being an option as a left eight? Let's see what you guys have on the poll too. I have a poll going. Um, what am I seeing? 74 votes. 73% say yes, 27% said no. So that's pretty resounding that you guys would want to see him come in. Um, let's see. Twisted says, Jess, who's your dream 50 to 60 million midfielder? I would say this may just be recency bias because I just watched him play and I like him so much and I like what he did, is probably somebody like Alexis Mac Allister. I think um he's a better version of what Tielemans would give us. He's more certain than like Milinkovic Savage. Like Milinkovic Savage looks good and he does a lot of the good things, but he's older and I have a weird feeling that there's a reason why nobody's ever went for him. Um and I'm very big on the fact that I feel like we need another 8 and that 8 needs to be able to score goals, get into the box, make late runs, do Ramsey things, but also be robust enough. And that's what I kind of see in McAllister. I also did like Enzo Fernandez. He's more expensive, but I actually liked him as well. I thought he would do good for us. But yeah, like I think McAllister is somebody that I would really look at. Rice, I get what you guys see in him. Like, I get that you guys like him, and I can understand why you do. I just personally, he's not my cup of tea. He's just not for the amount that they want for him. Sam Jal says, I hope we don't spend any more than 25 million on a player based on a World Cup performance. I hope we find another Martinelli for peanuts. So here's where I disagree a little bit on the World Cup performances. It depends on what you saw in the player before. So a World Cup performance can just sometimes it just raises the price, but there's players that we've seen that have played well in this World Cup with that weren't necessarily unknowns before the World Cup. So like Mohamed Kudus, like I'm sure that his price went up just a little bit because he played well for Ghana, but we knew about him because he was playing well for Ajax. We knew about McAllister. I think this reinforced my ideas on like, is he good? Is he not? Because he's had an excellent season for Brighton. He's been good for them. And he's still young. So we've known about these players already. It's the players that we didn't really know about and just kind of like jumped out of nowhere. Maybe somebody like, I don't know, did you guys know about Ramos before? He started for Portugal. I don't know. I didn't know about him. So it just depends on like, did we know about them? Did this just reinforce who we thought they were before the tournament started? Or did we become aware of the player through the tournament and nobody else really knew him? You know what I mean? But I understand not wanting to spend a lot of money. I get that as Arsenal fans, we're really kind of like, oh my gosh, we're going to spend all this money on this player. I totally get that. But if you told me that we would buy one really good attacker in January and that was it, and then we would turn around in the summer, bring in a left-sided center back for free, and bring in a marquee midfielder, and that's all we would do, I'd probably be okay with that because I think right now we're in a position where we're in marquee mode. Like we're in marquee mode. We built the squad with some really inexpensive pieces. Like we got really lucky, I think, with Thomas Partey for 45 million with the release clause. He would never have cost that without that. Odegaard for 30 million, that was a bargain. Tomiyasu for like 18 million, like Gabriel Jesus for 45 million. We're in the marquee modes now where we're only going to probably be bringing in 1 or 2 players a summer. And so that's how I feel about it. First of all, I don't think Arteta is afraid to work with a smaller squad, a tighter squad. And I think it's about quality versus quantity and players that can play in multiple positions. And so I don't think we're gonna be buying 5 or 6 players every window now. Do you know what I mean? I think we're kinda beyond that, and we have, like you guys said, some really good players coming through, um, that can fill in those gaps. Let's see. Emil says, "A better 8 would be Moroccan Azzedine Ouani." He was amazing. Couldn't stop talking about him during the tournament. I thought he was really, really good, very skillful, smooth, looked like the type of player that Arsene would have loved. But because I know that McAllister can play in the Premier League, and I know that some people are like, "What does that matter? What does that matter?" It matters to me because I need to know that you can play. It's not that the Premier League is like so much better as a technical league. It's so much different as a physical league, and so I need somebody that's not going to get thrown around, somebody that can play in that A position, go both ways, and I think he can do that. But Awani, I was like, I don't know why we would need Awani, but I want Awani. You know what I mean? Because he was very good. And so was Amrabat. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's see. Victor says, Jess, where is the right back that can't defend João Cancelo? Where's the right back that can't defend João Cancelo? What do you mean? What do you mean? What are you saying? Um, Muneen says, I wouldn't go anywhere near those Moroccan boys. Those guys were playing out of their skins for more than football. Well, here's the thing is like I never knew about Awani. I didn't. So I'd be a little bit afraid about him. But by all accounts, Amrabat is a player that people that watch Serie A say has been good for a long time. So he's not somebody that I'd be afraid to see come in. But I get what you guys are saying. Like some of these teams were playing above their level, and so you really wouldn't want to bring them in. Um, let's see. Agree with marquee mode, but the club has still been rumored to be doing smart business in K and Dika for exactly. So that's what I was saying. Like you could bring in Dika for free. You could let Brick Norton Cuffy maybe come in as a right back. We'll talk about Cedric in a second. Um, you can do certain things in the market and make sure that you have the money and the ability to bring in those marquee signings and be smart in other places. And that's what I think Arsenal are going to do anyway. Like I think Arsenal are going to do that, but in the future, it doesn't really make sense to bring in players that don't really move the needle in certain positions. Like xhaka is a hard player to get better than without spending a lot. Does that make sense? So Granit Xhaka, he does the defensive work. He's fitness wise, he's reliable. Right now, he's scoring goals, getting assists. He works really well with Thomas Partey. It's going to be really difficult to break into that with a player that's just kind of like okay, or good, but whatever. It's gonna have to be a marquee signing. It's gonna have to be somebody that at the space that they're at right now is probably just as good, if not better than Xhaka, and could potentially get way better than him in the future. So I do think that it's gonna be difficult to kind of get those types of players in the team without having to spend a lot. And that's why I think Arsenal will go for marquees now instead of like the smart buys in every position. Um, ZFB says Indica for free, Tielemans free would be excellent business, frees up our budget for big signings like Osimhen, Kudus, Mudryk, Rice, etc. Well, that is true, and we have seen that Arsenal are still interested in Tielemans, whatever. Um, so I wouldn't be like too disappointed with that, but I would not expect Tielemans to unseat Xhaka. He's not going to. Xhaka right now, the way that he's playing is better than Tielemans for us. So he would be a rotational option, which is not a bad one, but just don't expect him to take Granit Xhaka's spot. Now, Osimhen, not sure that we'd be looking at a player like that. I'm going to be really honest with you guys. Gabriel Jesus got the contract that he got from Arsenal and came to Arsenal because he was promised that he was going to be the number 9. And so I don't see Arsenal bringing in a number 9 that would start above him. I just don't. And I don't see somebody like Osimhen, who is playing really well at Napoli, coming to Arsenal to share time with Gabriel Jesus or to just play in the Champions League and Gabriel Jesus play in the Premier League. I don't see it. So it's just not something that I can envision. But what I can envision is somebody like what Arsenal need to do is pretty much find their Julian Alvarez if Nketiah is not him. You know what I mean? Like I've spoken about Nketiah a lot. I do think that maybe we're a little bit too quick to just discount him as somebody that can do a job, but we just needed to figure out if he's gonna be somebody that we cannot rely upon, or can he be a Diogo Jota? Can he be a Julian Alvarez for us? Now, that's a tall order because those players could start on pretty much any other Premier League team, but don't usually start for their team because the players ahead of them are really, really good. They're world-class players. But you need players like that in your team to come in the European matches and to step in for the starting striker when they're not there. And they're also players that you can sell to other Premier League teams for a shit ton of money, like Manchester City did for with us. So I think we're in the finding out modes of Nketiah. If Nketiah can't step up and can't, do a job, he's 23, I think. So right now he needs to start looking like he can do something. But I think that's kind of where we're at right now. I don't see an Osimhen, like I don't see a Vlahovic. I don't see these types of guys coming in because we gave Gabriel Jesus the number 9. And those types of players come in and they want the number 9. They're not going to sit on the bench behind Gabriel Jesus. It's not happening. So you need to find a developing striker that's good enough that they can, play with the first team and do a good job, but is also kind of okay with being second fiddle. So that's kind of where we're at. Um, so yeah. There's 104 of you guys in here, which is amazing. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let's move on to the next little bit of news, Mudryk Competition. So I don't know if you guys have been seeing this around, but basically, with the Mudryk news is it kind of feels like Arsenal are trying to feel that out, but they don't want to spend as much as Shakhtar want, and the price seems to be coming down, but there's more teams that seem to be interested. So this is an exclusive from Footy Insider 247 that Newcastle have made a move for Mudryk as they prepare to go toe-to-toe with Arsenal for his signature. So we've kind of seen this before, that when we're interested in a player and we're kind of standing firm on what price we're willing to go to, all these other teams seem to be interested. And so it could be one of two things. Newcastle are really interested and are prepared to go toe-to-toe with Arsenal, or Shakhtar is putting this stuff out here to make sure that they maintain a good fee for Mudryk. I think we kind of understand that Mudryk really wants to come to Arsenal, so I'm not really like, "Oh, well, he really wants to come to Arsenal, but he'll just turn his back so he can go to Newcastle," whatever. I don't think this is a Bruno Guimaraes situation, which we were interested in him, but nowhere near as interested as we are with Mudryk. But Newcastle do have the funds and the ability to pay probably whatever Shakhtar are willing to or want. So that does pose somewhat of an issue for Arsenal, because then we can't drive the price right down. Mudryk is not worth more than 30 million. I have to be honest. Like, I don't think he's worth more than that. I do think sales like Jack Grealish and Antony have really have really inflated the market, and have Shakhtar, a team that's in the Ukrainian league, thinking that Mudryk, because of the couple of performances that he had against in the Champions League, should be in and around that fee. He's nowhere near that. That needs to be closer to 40 to 50 million, I think. And even that is like we're paying a premium for a player that, shouldn't be that much. So I think there is probably competition. I think there are teams probably sniffing around. Why wouldn't there? Because he's a really good player. But I think Arsenal are still in the driving seat with this, but we know that Arsenal will walk away if they don't feel like the fee is right. And we have to think about, what were we willing to spend on Rafinha? Was something around 55 million, and that was like in a payment structure, playing with credit cards, you know what I mean? So with not a lot up front, because that was a big part of it. So I would imagine that that's probably where we're okay to go to, is probably like 50 something million. And so we'll see how this unfolds. But Newcastle being involved, I'm like, where would he play for them? I'm thinking that, but at the same time, like, I don't know their team well enough to know. Like, a Newcastle fan would probably say, well, he would fit in perfectly here. But St. Maximin plays off of the left. So I'm trying to figure out, like, where does that fit in? But he's an exciting, young player with a lot of hype around him that has blistering speed, good skill, and has an eye for goal. And those types of players do tend to cost more. And I would love to see Mudryk come in January. I do think he's would help us. Is he a versatile attacker like we've kind of spoken about, like the likes of Felix or Ferran Torres? No, he's not. So we can't kill two birds with one stone. But what he does allow Arsenal to do is play him off the left and Martinelli through the middle if Nketiah is not working out, which is an option that I think Arsenal should look at. I think Martinelli can play through the middle. Is it different than what we would get from a Gabriel Jesus? Absolutely, because the technical level through the middle, being a close control, is not really exactly the same. We know that Martinelli likes to get his head down and kind of burrow through people and stuff like that. But what he has that Gabriel Jesus does not is the clinical finishing and getting on the end of crosses and just that sheer striker vibes, you know what I mean? And so Mudryk does give you an option, but he's not necessarily as versatile as I think some of us would want, but he would help. He would help. Having somebody like that coming in at the 60th minute when we're winning 1-0 would help us with those counterattacks, which I do think we need to brush up on our counterattacks. I do think sometimes we're wasteful, um, and it's something that we could work on. And also, there's footage of him out there doing more than just counterattacking. So I don't want to take that away from him and say he's just a road runner. You know what I mean? So Mudryk, there's competition for Mudryk, which any good player, there's going to be competition for his signature. It's just a matter of if he's willing to push for the move so much that Shakhtar have no choice but to sell him, and if Arsenal can agree a decent fee, which seems like kind of where we're at. With the it's about the fee. And Arsenal we know will walk away if they don't feel like the fee is right. DJ Oni says we need to start getting used to Newcastle battling for the same players as us and be ready to lose some to them as well. Yeah, I do kind of agree with that. I think because Mudryk could start at Newcastle, where he wouldn't be a natural starter, I think, at Arsenal right away. And so that's attractive. They're in the Champions League spots right now. They could very well get into the Champions League. I think this break it was good for Newcastle because they can get a lot of their players back because they were playing with injuries. I don't think people like Newcastle were playing with injuries. So this break probably came at the right time for them. They're in the Champions League spots and they're probably telling players that we're on the up and up. This is 1 year into Eddie Howe and we are already in the Champions League spots. And if you come to us, we will push for it. You can be a part of this, whatever this juggernaut is going to be in the future. Whereas with Arsenal, it's a little bit different. We have players in those positions that are kind of the starters. Martinelli is the guy playing left wing. And so Mudryk is going to have to really fight for a spot. And Arsenal need to prove to some of these really good players coming through that they're not going to fall behind with big teams like Manchester City, Manchester United potentially getting taken over, Liverpool potentially getting taken over, Newcastle already be taken over. Um, it's Arsenal need to prove that they're not going to just slip into mediocrity again because these other teams are going to be bankrolled. So it's going to be hard for Arsenal. They need to be able to prove it. Emil says, I think Martinelli can do it from the little I've seen of the rotations that he and Jesus do in games. That's another good point is that at any point in the game, you know, Martinelli is playing through the middle, Saka is through the middle, xhaka is through the middle. So it's not necessarily like we have to worry about it too much. Maybe Mudryk could rotate into the middle. We don't really know. So yeah. Laud says, Newcastle United are a big threat in the transfer market. They can bid $1 billion for a player without breaching anything. And yeah, Isak was injured before the World Cup. Exactly. So they didn't even have Isak. St. Maximin was also dealing with injuries. This is a team that is definitely like breathing down our necks. And I've accepted it, but I would like to see us, if this is a player that we really want, to just kind of nail it down and get it done. Zender says Shakhtar play more of a possession-oriented style domestically while the league is different. His underlying stats are quite comparable to Saka and Martinelli, slightly better in fact. Good point. Really good point. So you guys let me know in the chat what you guys think about Mudryk. Do you think we'll get him? Do you think he won't? Do you even want him? Like, let me know in the chat. Now, this came as kind of like a shock to me. Kind of like a shock to me. Cedric to Fulham? Close? What the hell? So I did see that Fulham were looking at Cedric, but Alex Crook had kind of uh put out something yesterday that Fulham are closing in on the signing of Cedric Soares. Now, we knew that Arsenal would not be okay with letting him go if they did not have a replacement, but at the same time, I'm not quite sure that it really matters because right now with Cedric, there's just too much competition for his spot. We have Tommy and then we have White. Both of them are the preferred options. Like, it's funny because tomiyasu didn't took some people's positions. Tomiyasu is the backup right back and also the backup left back. So because he can play on both sides and Arteta clearly really trusts him and likes him a lot, there's just no space for Cedric. We don't need a third right back. And so moving Cedric on for me is not a big deal. I don't think we're going to be sitting there in May being like, why didn't we keep Cedric? Like, I don't think that's what it's going to be. So moving him on, I think El Neni on and Holding are going to be really important because I just think that they're taking up room and they're not really, I know it sounds rude, but like they're nice guys that do a good job in terms of like team morale and helping the young players and things like that. They don't necessarily help the bottom line in terms of what we're trying to do talent wise. And so moving on somebody like Cedric and maybe giving a Brook Norton Cuffy a run or whatever you want to do. Like even if you let Brook Norton Cuffy stay out on loan, maybe bringing in somebody else and moving Tommy full time to the left back position. I don't know. I don't know what they want to do with it, but I'm okay with Cedric going. You guys know I'm okay with Cedric going. I don't think we'll like really necessarily be missing out. And like, I'm sure he wants to play football and going to Fulham is not a bad move. I think Fulham are playing good football. They look good under Marco Silva. And so, yeah, like he can go there. Like no big deal. Laud says, let's get rid of Cedric. Dude is a waste of wages, always injured. Um, yeah, I mean, it's good to relieve some of those wages, right? So that you could give them to somebody that's actually helping the bottom line. DJ Oni says, I think a front three of Mudryk, Martinelli, and Saka is deadly. And then you add the runs of xhaka, Odegaard into the box. That's plenty of goals. Fair enough. So yeah, Cedric to Fulham looks like it's close. I don't think any of us will really miss him. You guys let me know in the chat what you guys think about Cedric leaving. Let me take a sip of my coffee because my throat is dry. Sorry, I was on mute. Anton Dunn says, and loves a cross, which Mitro will enjoy. He does like a hit and hope, big cross, first time, boom. So yeah, I think that's probably a better place for him right now because he's not really somebody that can play inverted the way that Arteta wants. And like the way our right backs are set up right now, they're big, they're strong, they're good defenders, but they also play more like midfielders and invert. And Tomiyasu and Ben White are just a better fit for that right now than Cedric. And so and I think I saw a tweet about this that once he goes, that'll be the last Kia Drapshin signing left at Arsenal, which would be great to get rid of. EK says, better let him go in the summer. We are in 3 competitions, need the numbers right now. Maybe, but I still think 2 in each position is probably fine. Because again, like Tommy and White are the right backs, and then Zinchenko, Tommy, and Tierney are the left backs. That's plenty of fullback, in my opinion. I don't think Cedric is really needed, whereas Holding is a little bit closer, I think, to being needed because we don't have a left-sided center back, and so he naturally just kinda, like, comes in as the 4th option, where Cedric is just he's not getting any playing time, like, he's not, you know? So I think we have enough fullbacks to make it through even in 3 competitions, but I get where it's like kinda like last season, we felt like, "Well, why did we get rid of Ainsley Maitland-Niles? Why did we get rid of these players?" I don't actually think that that was our issue, was getting rid of those guys, the Chambers and the Ainsley Maitland-Niles. It was not bringing somebody in. That's what it was. Kunte says, "We need to move on a number of players to make room for youngsters like Dewberry." You guys really like him, which is good because a lot of that they look good, like, in against Juventus, like, I just kinda threw that away. I know some people really took that, like, deep. They were like, "Oh, yeah, like, this is it. It's the end." All I really saw was a team that was going through the motions. We looked okay. We made some little mistakes, and the young players came in and showed that Haaland is still cooking, and he was one of them. He was pretty good. Laud says Southampton manager said he was shocked when he made the inquiry. When we made the inquiry to sign Cedric, dude was a bencher and injured. We got him on loan when he was injured. So good we got rid of Raul from the boardroom. I agree. Cedric is somebody that just kind of was there, but and Arteta's done a good job giving him a role, making him feel important in some ways, but he just never was good enough and was always kind of like him and Pablo Marie coming in that window didn't help us at all. So yeah. Thab says when Ndika comes in, he'll also be left back cover. Exactly. So, well, yeah, I think we have enough fullback, but all in all, I don't think we'll miss Cedric that much. We'll make it work. I think that's one of those where we're probably just fine. Now I'm saying this and then everybody goes down and then we're like, you guys are like, Jess, you said, but I do believe it. So let me know what you guys think about that. And last but not least, probably the biggest news from yesterday's kind of like roundup and today's roundup is Martinelli is close to signing a contract extension with Arsenal worth £200,000 per week. And that's from Sammy McBell. That's pretty freaking reliable, you guys. So the original report, I think, did come from Sport, and then Sammy McBell, yeah. So Arsenal are close to agreeing a new contract with Gabriel Martinelli, and we'll see the Brazilian international become one of the club's top earners. Sources have indicated that Martinelli's new contract will be in the region of £200,000 per week. Now, I am ecstatic. I am excited. I am so happy that Martinelli is the first, because we know that Saka and Saliba are going to happen, but those are the more difficult ones to get done. But I feel like both of them are gonna stay. But just seeing somebody just say like, okay, in 2027 is when, uh that's a long time. Like I think that's a big contract. Like it really is. And it's solidifying our future. And I do think that the club has done a good job re-upping the young players intermediate, like before it gets too late. Like they're kind of doing it close enough where the players feel like they're constantly being kind of like rewarded for what they're doing. And we need to keep all those teams away from Martinelli. Having a big contract like that helps us just in case Martinelli does get the itch to want to leave, that we will get a big fee for him. But at the same time, I think it just shows that Martinelli is really bought into what we're doing. And that's a good thing. Now, when we talk about the £200,000 per week, let's just start off with the fact that most of the time when people report the wages or the wage structure or whatever, they usually put the biggest amount because it's the one that gets the most clicks. And so I'm not saying that it's not £200,000 per week, but what I am saying is that the base could be a lot lower and the incentives can take it up to £200,000 per week. And he said in the region of, and so let's just take it with a grain of salt because we know what journalists like to do. If you say that the base is, £150,000 per week, it could rise up to, nobody's going to click on it, but they want it to be like he's going to be our top earner. But let me just say this is that if he was our top earner, I would sleep well at night because Martinelli, a lot of Arsenal fans have said this, that they feel like he's the best left winger in the league. Best left winger in the league. So if you have the best left winger in the league, you have the best right winger. The only player that's better than Saka is Mohamed Salah. If you have the best young center back in the league, better than Lisandro Martinez, better than Fofana, better than this guy, then you got to pay them like they're the best, regardless of their age. Like our players just happen to be reaching levels at young ages. Like we have a young team that are playing out of their skin and are growing so quickly. So if Gabriel Martinelli is our top earner, he's one of our best players. Like you have Thomas Partey, Gabriel Jesus, and then you have Saka and Martinelli. That to me are our best players. Like Saka, Martinelli, Gabriel Jesus, Thomas Partey, and then you have like Saliba. I think we're gonna pay a premium for what he's gonna become, but we know what he's gonna be. And then everybody else. And that's no shade to everybody else, but that's just kind of, no, Odegaard too. Like even Odegaard, like I'm even forgetting him, but sorry. But Saka and Martinelli are 2 of our best players. They're in the top 5. Like, they just are. Like, no matter how you slice it, how you dice it, they are. They're 2 of the best wingers in the league. Pl you know, Pep wants Saka, Klopp wants Martinelli, so we're gonna have to pay them like they're players that can pay for the best team in the Premier League. And the best players on the best teams in the Premier League get paid the best wages. And so we just have to get over it. I do think there's a feeling that like we got the wage bill down to keep it down, but we got it down so that we could pay good players good wages. And so as long as Martinelli and Saka continue to grow and are still the players that we know that them to be, it's not a big deal. Like I'm really not tripping. But I know some people are like, we need to keep the wage bill down. We need to keep the wage bill down. No, that's not how it works. Look at the wage structure of all the best teams in the Premier League. Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, like look at their wage structures. They all have players that are on 100, 150, 200 grand per week. Champions League teams, especially Champions League teams that are Premier League teams, this is what they pay. And so it just is what it is. Our players just happen to be 20, 21. It just is what it is. So yeah. Laud says 200K for Martinelli is good for now. In years, he'll be worth 500K because dude keeps improving all the time. Yo-Yo says fans love to pocket watch ballers. It's boring. It costs to be a big club. I agree. Emil says top 5 is Partey, Jesus, Saka, Martinelli, Saliba. I mean, that's kind of how I feel the list is. And then like it's unfortunate, but like the next 2 are probably like Odegaard and Ben White. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're right there. So it is what it is. Like those are our top players, so they're going to be paid the most. Thomas Partey and Gabriel Jesus, I do think are top 2 earners, and it'll be Saka and Martinelli right after them. And to be honest, like our the way that we play is really hinges on our wingers. Like I really don't think I think our center striker is kind of like the hub and what we kind of rotate around and stuff like that. But our wingers do the business. Saka and Martinelli do the business week in and week out. They are our people. Like they are our guys. They are our Mane and Salah. Like they just are. And so because of their importance in our team, I really do think we have to get real about what they're going to be getting paid. Like, you know what I mean? Tope says Sancho is on 350K producing far less. Laud says Wenger saved Arsenal billions. That's kind of true. I do think that he was really papering over the cracks with some of the things that he was doing. And, we just weren't really prepared at that point in time because of the stadium and the way things were and the Crunkies not having full ownership to really go in and really spend the money on the players like we should have been. And so Arsenal was doing wonders with what he had. That's very true, but we're in a different era now, and we're just gonna be that's what we're gonna be doing. We're gonna be paying players what they're worth. Twisted says, Jess, justify 200 thousand pounds per week for Martinelli. Quantify his contribution. So the way I justify it is that, well, first of all, this season so far, and like this is not going to be the end of him, right? Um, he has what, 5 goals or something like that. Let me see. Let me just get into it. He has 5 goals and 2 assists, which isn't bad so far for the first third. So let's say the next 2 thirds he does the same. He'll be in like the 15 goal mark, something like that. There's a lot of wingers that don't hit beyond 7 goals per season. So let's just say that Martinelli is tracking to have one of his best seasons, and he'll probably be in the top 5% of wingers in the league. Let's just say that. But his contribution is the same levels in my mind as what Mane would do for Liverpool. He starts our attacks, he finishes our attacks, he does all the defensive work, he wins the ball back, he terrifies defenders. Him and Saka do a lot of the work. I don't really think people understand how important they are to our team. And so when you start talking about justify somebody's wages, it's how important are they to your team, and where do they rank in terms of the other players kind of similar in their positions at other teams? He's better than Grealish. He's probably on the same level as Luis Diaz. He's much better than anything that Chelsea has. He's better than Sancho. he's better than Antony. Like, he's better than all these guys. The only players that's could really to really speak to him, I don't even know who that is at this point. Um, so not only is he one of the best in his position in terms of like, and then you can go into the world and say like, okay, Vinny Jr. is probably better than him. Who else? Is Rafinha better than him? Maybe not, you know? So we're talking about there's probably only in the world, probably 3 or 4 players that you can say definitively are better than him. And then his importance to our team is that if he does not play, are we gonna have a freaking heart attack? Absolutely. Um, I just feel like it's more than just goals and assists. The goals and assists are there already. It's only been a quarter of the season. 5 goals and 2 assists is damn good. But in the world, I can't really name too many better left wingers out there that are definitively better than him. Not in the world, not in the league. And then for us, him and Saka, if they're not available, we're just not the same. So his contribution is more than just, that. So I think it's fair. I think it's fair, to be honest. Because that's how important he is to us. And any team that he goes to from here on out, let's just put it this way. If he goes to a Barcelona, if he goes to a Real Madrid, he's going to be getting paid just as much as that, if not more. And he's going to cost we probably won't even start talking to them until they start talking about 3 digits. You know what I mean? Like, Martinelli is that good. He's just breaking into that, and like the good thing about the World Cup is that he didn't get injured. And, Brazil went out kind of early, but from what he did show, people know that he's there. Do you know what I mean? He exists. And so more teams are going to start really looking at him. And so we have to be prepared. Like, Martinelli has like world-class level talent. Like, he's just there. And the thing about it too is like he's just so different than the players that play in his position. Like, has a striker's mentality, but he has the winger attributes as well. He can play both positions. He can play off of the right, off of the left, and through the center. And because of Arteta's work, which I don't think he gets enough credit for, Martinelli has refined the rawness. So he's still raw and still very efficient and direct, but it's more refined. Do you know what I mean? And so he does so much good work out there. He does all the tracking back, all of that. He harasses his defenders. But the guy he's hard to deal with. He goes right by you. His dribbling style is unorthodox, but it's effective. Like, he's just so different. And then you see players like Sancho and Antony that are just like memes. Like, they're just YouTube compilation players, but Martinelli actually has the juice. Do you know what I mean? Like, Martinelli's just good. Like, it just is what it is. Yo-Yo says Martinelli and Saka need wages to keep them at the club to stop them from joining our rivals. It's simple. Their stock is rising. I agree. We need to keep everybody away, and we also need to pay them like they're our best players, because they are. Christian says also giving Martinelli 200 K per week will fend off a lot of teams for any potential interest because they will not be able to afford his wages. Exactly, because if we could keep Martinelli and Saka at the club for the next, let's just say 4 years, like, what could we accomplish? These players are not even anywhere near what they're going to be. Like, Martinelli is having his breakout season, but Saka, like, this isn't like a Saka section, but let's just like talk about him for just a second. He had a better World Cup than a lot of the best wingers in the world. He just did. There's a lot of new eyeballs on him, a lot of people that didn't know who Saka was that know who he is now off of just the few games that he played for England. So Saka, he's not having his breakout season, but he's having that explosion. Like, he's the face of Arsenal, also the face of England as well. Like, a lot of the marketing, a lot of people talk about Saka. So Martinelli breakout season, Saka, becoming a household name. Like, it's just, yeah. Yeah. We have a lot going on. EK says Martinelli brings fear to opposition fullbacks. Exactly. And let me just say this also about Saka, is that when France were talking about what they needed to do to nullify England, they said Saka, because he was being just like he is in the Premier League that we see all the time. They were kicking him, but they were also double and triple teaming him. You know? So it's insane. It really, really is. So yeah, I think we need to pay them like they're our best players. And then Saliba is a whole nother conversation because even though he didn't play in this World Cup and people were talking and all this kind of stuff, Saliba, this may not be the season where it happens, but it's gonna happen. Like, this guy is gonna there people are gonna realize that he's gonna be the best center back in the world. Like, it just is gonna happen. And I'm glad that he didn't have to play in this World Cup because if they had lost while he was on the pitch, they would have blamed him, whatever. But he got to experience it kind of in the same way Martinelli did. Martinelli had a little bit more playing time, I think, but he got to experience it, and then in the next 4 years, like, it's gonna happen. Like, it's just gonna happen. So yeah, that's what we have to do. We just have to pay them. So we'll oh, that's nice. Thank you so much for your super chat. AFC Max says, "Big up, Jess. Always enjoy your shows. After Terry confirming girlfriend status confirms my sorry. After Terry confirming girlfriend status confirms my theory on why Arsenal are scaring teams. Congratulations, by the way. Thank you so much." Um, he doesn't say Arsenal are scaring people because of me. He says Arsenal are scaring people because he actually like believes that Arsenal are. So it's not me like saying say good things. I actually would prefer him not to say anything because I don't want people bigging up Arsenal too much because it means the pressure is on. But yeah, let's see. Twisted says a combined Arsenal City um 11 would highlight where you actually are. Fair enough, you know. That would be interesting to see, like, probably wouldn't really do one until we're about to play them, but that's a good conversation to have, like, how many of our players get into their team and vice versa or combined, would kinda show us where we think we are because I do still think Manchester City are the better team, even though we're playing better than them, if that makes sense. But I think we're probably 2 or 3 players away from and maybe some progression from some of our young players like Saka and Martinelli to being right there with them. But then it's also the experience factor. They have a lot of players that have been there and done that. And so Arsenal also need to build up muscle memory and experience as well. And so that's going to take time. But thank you guys so much. We're gonna end the show there. It's been a nice hour-long show. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Um, is doing an interview with Jamie Carragher at 10:30 p.m. tonight on Sky Sports, and so tomorrow's show will probably have a little bit of a review of what they spoke about there. It's Arteta's 3-year anniversary was yesterday, so we'll probably do something of like a rating of Arteta, how we feel about, what he's accomplished so far, how you feel about how his tenure has been. Has it been overrated, underrated, or rated perfectly? You guys will let me know then. And yeah, any more transfer news, I'll be on it for you guys. Thank you so much for being here, chatting with me. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.